Hi, how's it going? This is Resident of Collinwood for YouTube, back with another Dark Shadows video for you guys and gals. I'm here to continue my Night of Dark Shadows character retrospectives. Who's next? I was gonna do the house next, but you know what? I called an audible. I decided to do Angelique Collins next. Simply because she needs to be done next. She has the fewest lines of any character, any of the main characters in this actual story. Um, her lines are very little. I'll get into that actually here in a moment. But before I get into who Angelique Collins from Night of Dark Shadows is, let me get into who she isn't. This is not, I've talked about how in these Dark Shadows movies, some of the characters do have the same names as certain characters in the series, but they're not those exact characters. And I would say that most fits this version of Angelique. Um, this is not the Angelique from 1795. Not quite. Now, you could make the case, well, she is obsessing after one specific man. Yeah, Charles Collins. Not Quentin Collins, Charles Collins. And I'll get into that here in a moment. She wants Charles to be who she feels who he really is. She wants Quentin to be Charles. That's who she thinks he is. Um, you know, she's not. How do I put this? In this version of Night of Dark Shadows, because we don't have Night of Dark Shadows, though it is a movie, is not the full version of events. There is Dan's cut that does need to be made. But I can only talk about what I've actually seen. There's no actual spell casting really done in this movie from a Quentin standpoint. It's not like she casts some spell on Quentin, to do stuff to him. Everything that is done to Quentin is from a memory standpoint the moment he arrives here in this house, the moment he arrives in Collinwood, which is the Lyndhurst estate in the movie. Again, as I pointed out with Night of Dark Shadows, it is being filmed at the same place, the Lyndhurst estate. So we're on location here. This is not a set or sound stage. We're here. We're in New York, baby. Um, why not? Hey, you got the budget to do a movie? You go to the actual location, right? So is Angelique Collins the Angelique from 1795? Not really. There's no, because when we meet that Angelique, we're meeting her for the first time. She is a grown woman, but she also is somebody who isn't married. The Angelique we're meeting here is married. She's having an affair with Charles Collins. I mean, that's the premise here, right? Angelique Collins is not married to Charles Collins, and Charles Collins isn't married to Angelique. They're having one hell of an affair, and they're making no effort to hide it. Beautiful, beautiful. Did I say this movie has adultery? Oh wait, no, I didn't. I just didn't know. This movie has adultery. Of all the other things this movie has, domestic abuse, adultery. This movie, I don't want to say it has it all, but it has a good bit of things in this movie that really make you raise your eyebrows at it. But it's still a fun watch. It's adultery. Yes, I said the word adultery on here. I'm from a small town. You can tell I live in a small town. Um, so, I'm so sorry. I'm laughing at myself, nothing else. I assure you, I'm more laughing. Listen, if you can't laugh at yourself, then who can you laugh at? Um, is this Angelique Collins, the Angelique from 1970 Parallel Time? No, that Angelique Collins from the series was more like the Phoenix. She needed, instead of body warmth, she needed people's energy to stay alive. not necessarily their heat, mind you. Um, this Angelique, by the way, this Angelique is an actual ghost. The Angelique in 1970 parallel time was not a ghost. Yeah, she was dead, or she was dead, but she wasn't a ghost. This this Angelique Collins is a completely different iteration to what we got in the series. Number one, we're not meeting her as her lively self. We're meeting her through memories of when she was alive. We know she's a ghost or a spirit that haunts not just the house, but the grounds itself. Keep in mind, um, John Carlin's character sees her too. So there is that. We also see Nancy Barrett's character sees the white cloud, uh, above her husband. So there is that. That it's the same white ghostly cloud that's going to kill them at the end of the movie. Spoiler alert. Sorry. um, this Angelique now. This Angelique Collins. Who is she? Well, first of all, she is the wife of Gabriel Collins, but again, she's having an affair with Charles Collins. What is it with these Collins men? They cannot either a keep a woman from going after another man, or running off on their wives. What the hell? Dark Shadows, you gotta love it. I know I do. So, who is Angelique? More specifically, what is she? I said we see her through memories, and we know she haunts these halls. In every way, shape, and form, especially in this movie, this Angelique Collins is more being presented in the form of a siren than anything else. And you might say, well, she's not singing a song. No, she's not. But her memories are infecting the memories of Charles Collins are affecting the mind of one Quentin Collins. Ever since he stepped foot in this house, he keeps seeing specifically her at moments from those times. Ever since he got in this house, you can make the case that Quentin Collins always heard Angelique's call to come to that house. Now, we never actually hear that. I want to make that very clear. I'm not saying we do. We don't actually hear Quentin receive a call to come to the house by Angelique. But he does inherit this house because he's the next in line to inherit this house. Carletta is. I want to keep this real clear because I hate to do this with Carletta because I do have to get to her retrospective. But I do have to mention the characters, Angelique and Quentin interact with here, and so does Tracy. Carletta is the reincarnation of a girl called Sarah. Who that now for those who don't know who Sarah is in Night of Dark Shadows, I want to make sure who she isn't. This is not Sarah Collins. This is not Barnabas's sister. This is a girl who lived at the lived at the great house, lived in Collinwood, and this was a girl that Angelique gave her necklace to and said, "Remember me." Um, you know, this oh my God, the psychology of this movie is intense, and you have the Sarah, who is Sarah's memories are in Carletta's. In every way, Carletta is Sarah, just a fully grown up, different version in a weird about way. Again, I don't want to get too much into her because I do want to give her own retrospective, but that's who Carletta is. And, Alex, I'll get into that. I don't want to get too much into that. So sorry. Angelique, it's not just Quentin who hears her call, it's Carletta who hears her call. It's Jim Storm's character has been hearing Angelique's call. He he says I was good enough for her till he showed up. He says that, and That's one of the most shocking lines in this movie to me. It's like, wait, what? Who's he talking? Is he talking about that ghost that's walking around? You're doing it with a ghost? Like, what's going on? The Night of Dark Shadows is a fun, trippy movie that you definitely need to watch. I mean, its psychology is great. So by siren, and that's the thing about a siren, more than one person can hear it. You have Quentin, Carletta, Jim Storm's character Gerard Stiles. Um, you have multiple people hearing it. Now, does Tracy hear it? No, not really. She doesn't really hear it in the early parts of this movie. In fact, she's more she's more the siren's victim, if you will. She's more the sacrificial lamb of this movie. Almost not quite literally, because again, this is not Dan's cut, and I don't know if that's what Dan's cut entails. I want to be clear about this. By the end of the movie, what we get is, I've talked about the car chase sequence, the fight with James Storm's character Gerard Stiles, and that's how Quentin gets the scar and looks like Charles Collins. And when Tracy comes back into the house, um, there's Quentin. He's not Quentin no more. He's Charles. And as she's like, "Oh my God," she turned, and there's Angelique. Who's come down the steps. They're gonna kill her, and I mean, it's just to come to that realization in this movie is just all the more terrifying. Night of Dark Shadows is a terrifying trip inside the mind and inside literally a haunted house. I mean, now, is there a debate to be made about the siren thing? Sure, I do think you don't have to feel she's a siren. That's just something I'm more looking at, like, because to me, it more seems that she's a siren than a literal witch. Because she, yes, she affects the house, she affects the grounds. She haunts not just the halls, and she haunts the estate. Is her portrait the beacon? It could be. That's not something. I'm sort of wondering if that's the one when. Again, I'm going to get into the lines that Laura Parker has in this movie, and it's not much. There's a line Laura Parker says, "Brenda painting the life, Charles." Now, we see a painting of, you know, Tracy or whoever being a lifeless body being presented to Angelique. Now, to be clear, I don't think that's the portrait she's meaning. Just that's the only portrait she could be meaning. I believe Charles Collins painted Angelique's portrait in this movie, and Angelique's sort of soul, if you will, and presence remain as long as the portrait remains. Again, that's another iffy. Again, maybe I want to stress that word, maybe, because Night of Dark Shadows is a movie that is very intense. Again, the whole movie is just one. It's a great movie to watch. Don't get me wrong. I'm not knocking this, but it's very intense. You have a couple, a married couple, moving in to the estate and moving into the house, and they own the estate now, not knowing that it's haunted, not knowing that now that they've come here, these memories are just going to start flooding into Quentin Collins's mind. The craziness of Night of Dark Shadows is insane in a good way. I do think, is Angelique more of a siren? Yeah, I do believe so. Now, about the witchcraft that goes on in this movie, again, the Carletta may be a means to an end. And that's sort of how I view Carletta and James Storms' characters. They're both means to an end who are being used for the siren's ultimate purpose. And that's generally, if a siren has one specific goal to get the person it wants or to get something out of the person it wants, it's going to get that very thing. And in a sense, all as Angelique Collins wants is Charles Collins, and if she has to help manipulate a married man's mind and thinking he's not really himself, he's really Charles Collins, then she's going to do that. And that's what Night of Dark Shadows, Angelique, and this house are slowly causing. The longer that Quentin is not just there, but up in that tower room, the worse things are going to get for one Tracy for Tracy Collins, um, which is Quentin's wife in this movie. By the way, I love the score of this movie. Robert Cobert did a great, great, great job. Is Angelique a siren? I ask this of all of you. Do you think Angelique is a siren in Night of Dark Shadows? I think she is. She very well could be. I do think there's more of a siren feel than just a plain old witchcraft feel. I'm not saying that that's not going on. I'm just saying a siren has witchcraft like powers. So maybe that's just the case here. Um, about the lines. Laura Parker does not have many lines in this movie. Her lines are few and far between. Okay, bring the painting to life, Charles. Please don't forget me. Again, she does not have many lines. We hear her character laughing and we see her character. Laura Parker is a stunning, stunning woman, and absolute knockout, and could, playing Angelique could seduce any man she wanted. And you do sort of, that's another thing Night of Dark Shadows has. It's a very sexually oriented film that dwells into the psychology of lust as well. I do mean that. Night of Dark Shadows gets into lust in every way, shape, and form with this movie. Again, I said it gets into adultery, it gets into the lust aspect too, because I mean that's what adultery ultimately is. It's lust. Um, you know, again, I'm not saying Charles Collins didn't love Angelique. I'm just saying there's things going on in this movie you really gotta watch. Um, so again, Laura Parker did not have many lines in this movie. Sorry, I got off on a little tangent there. What do I think of that? You know, I'm all for. I'm. I love less is more, but I think there's a misconstrued here a bit. We sometimes look at a movie and go, "Man, that person didn't have a lot of dialogue," and sometimes that's just the case. A character doesn't have a lot of dialogue. But here's the thing: I don't mind less dialogue if if actions speak louder than any words ever could. And what are Angelique's actions in this movie to get Charles Collins, to have Quentin become Charles Collins? That's her actions in this movie. Tracy be damned. She does not give two shits about Tracy. It's she wants the man she loves back. She wants to come back and be with this man. That's Angelique's goal in this movie. And her actions, if it kills Tracy, if it kills Alex, if it kills Alex's wife, so be it. That type of action speaks louder than any form of dialogue ever could. And that's, I'm not defending the lack of dialogue, but I'm making my point of actions speak louder than words. And I love the act, I appreciate and love the actions because it lets you know what you're dealing with from a character standpoint. This woman, Angelique Collins, will destroy whoever she has to get the man she loves. Now that's a bit of a touch of 1795 to a degree. Though I don't think it. Do I think Angelique didn't want to kill Sarah? No, I don't think she wanted to kill Sarah. But there is this Angelique is a lot more cold blooded. Again, she's more of a siren than anything else. So she's going to use, manipulate, and destroy who she has to get what she wants, and that's her actions. Now, again, her dialogue. I agree. Huge shout out to my buddy Patrick McRae. I do agree with him. The lack of dialogue. It's like it's Laura Parker. This woman is a great talker. But you know what? I'm going to use a wrestling analogy. And I know people are going to kick. Some people don't like when I use wrestling analogies, and some people do. Steve Borden, who plays the character Sting in wrestling, is a great fucking talker. He's great at cutting promos. But you know what Sting's at his best? When he's silent. Because his actions do the talking for him. Seriously. I mean, Sting is one of those rare exceptions. He could have it any way he wanted it and be great. Steve Borden. My favorite wrestler is getting ready to retire. I forgot to give him a plug. But Laura Parker is so great either way. She's absolutely stunning. She's beautiful. She knows how to use her body to seduce a man. She is doing that in the utmost way throughout Night of Dark Shadows. And she's also manipulating a man who has the memories of the man she loved. She is manipulating Quentin and thinking he is Charles. And maybe Quentin is starting to think it too. Hence why he's attacking Tracy. You have to ask this question in Night of Dark Shadows. And I wanted to do this with Quentin's retrospective, so I'm sorry I didn't do it. Is it all Angelique's doing? Or is some of it Quentin's choosing to slowly become Charles Collins? And that's a question I will leave you with at the end of this retrospective. There's your question. You can give your answer in the comment sections. I'm gonna leave a link to the Dark Shadows Day book. Come down in the description box since I didn't have any guests on this one. Huge shout out to my buddy Patrick McRae. I just look. I think Angelique. This Angelique is a really fascinating character. Either way. Granted, no, she doesn't have a lot of dialogue, but sometimes you don't need a ton of dialogue either. You don't need very few. You don't need a lot of dialogue. I mean, some movies and characters do better when they have less dialogue. It's like when I first watched this movie, was I sort of shocked at that Laura Parker didn't have a lot of dialogue? Yeah, because I mean, when that's the thing, that's sort of where the movies and series sort of trip you up most, especially here in Night, because you heard Laura Parker be this amazing speaker and this line deliverer, and it's like now you're going from that to very, very, very few lines, but it works in this movie because of the character's actions. So that's what I'll say. And you guys heard my question. So was it all Angelique? uh, so I'll leave you guys with that. You guys have a great night, and I'll see you later.